And I know Director Wiener is on, but he doesn't have audio, video right now. I think I just saw Sasha.
Yeah, President Alvarado, this is Justin Lovell. I'm going to get the Vice President Sudeth is having a little difficulty logging back on. I'm going to get her on in just a minute.
Okay, thank you. Justin, are you there?
I am here, yes.
Is there a way to remove the chat option?
We can. I think we have to do that before the meeting. Actually, I may be able to do that right now.
If you can do it, that would be great.
If not, we may have to do it before the meeting starts. And
okay, so from here on in, I want you to remove the chat option.
Okay.
For future meetings.
Sure.
I'll make sure that that's set up for the future, Justin.
Okay.
No more chat option.
Okie dokie.
Let me see here. Actually, I think I can remove it now. It looks like. Let me see.
Great. Get rid of it.
Looks like it said I stopped it. We'll see if it
Much
works.
appreciated.
Okay.
President Alvarado, I do believe you've got your whole board here.
All right, everybody's aboard. So let's call the meeting to order. It's around 7:05. Please call the roll.
President Alvarado?
Here.
Vice President Sudeth?
Yes.
Director Stanley?
Yes.
Director Wiener?
Yes.
Director Cepeda?
Yes.
Okay, report from closed session. There was nothing really to report. Go ahead, Lisa, please chime in. Lisa Charbonneau.
There was no action taken, no items to report.
Thank you so much. Next item, please.
Item 2D, Pledge of Allegiance or observation of a moment of silence.
Sasha, I think there's something wrong with your connection. You're coming in broken up.
Yeah, I keep trying to mess with it, and I don't know. I shut down and rebooted. Can you hear me okay right now?
We can hear you, but you're breaking. You're not really coming in too clear, but it's okay. I think we can deal with it. Okay.
Okay, I'll try to mess with it while you guys are in discussion.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one
nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
as possible.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Approval of agenda.
I'll move the agenda.
Can I have a second to move the agenda?
Second.
Item's been moved and seconded. Please take the roll.
Vice President, President Alvarado.
Yes.
Vice President Sudeth.
Yes.
Director Stanley. Stanley, can you hear me?
Yes.
Director Wiener.
I abstain.
Abstain. Director Cepeda.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item. Any public comments? Any speakers for public comments, Sasha?
Sorry, none from me.
Okay. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 5, consent calendar. 5A, adopt a resolution authorizing the general manager to enter into a memorandum of understanding between West County Wastewater District and Public Employees Union Local 1 Administrative Clerical Unit for the period from July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2022, and approve the fiscal year 2021 amended wage schedule effective July 15th, 2020.
And item B?
I apologize. Item B, adopt a resolution authorizing the general manager to enter into an agreement with Owen Equipment to purchase a Vector brand hydro jetter for a total not to exceed $346,541.
I get a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion to move the consent calendar.
Okay, can I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, the item's been moved and properly seconded. Please take the roll.
President Alvarado,
Yes.
Vice President Suddeth,
Yes.
Director Stanley,
No, I'd like to pull this.
A little too late for that, Director Stanley. We're already in the vote. So yes or no,
or abstain.
or abstain?
Are we only talking about A?
No, we're talking about A and B.
Then no.
Director Cepeda,
Yes.
Director Weiner,
I abstain.
abstain. Motion passes 3-2.
Next item, please.
Item 6, action calendar. 6A, confirm West County Wastewater District's designated representative and alternatives for California Association of Sanitation Agencies, and authorize a designated representative to electronically cast a ballot for or against the slate of directors nominated for the CASA board seats for fiscal year 2020 to 2021 and the CASA annual membership dues resolution for the calendar year 2021.
Okay, who in staff is giving us a report on this?
President Alvarado, this is Justin Lovell, Administrative Services Department Manager. I will just introduce this item very briefly. This is for the board to reconfirm the designated representative from our board of directors representing CASA, and authorizing the vote for the slate of board of directors. So authorizing the representative, which is currently Director Stanley, to vote in the affirmative or against the slate of board of directors, and to vote for or against the resolution for the new member fees for calendar year 2021.
Okay. Questions or comments on this? Director Stanley?
Just a second. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, I read the slate, and I think the slate is acceptable. And when you took office, you just repeated what Director Weiner had, so I don't understand why we need to reconfirm. But I'm perfectly comfortable voting for the slate. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Weiner?
I speak for confirmation.
Thank you. Director Spada?
I like it. I just want to make a comment. I wish that we had more females and females of color on that ballot for next time, but I was glad to at least see one female of color on there. But if we can make a note, I think Director Suddeth made that known in previous conferences that, you know, we want to see more people of color and more women in these positions. So, but other than that, I'm good with that.
Thank you, Director Zepeda. Vice President Sutter?
Glad that Director Zepeda just brought it up, because this is exactly what I was about to say, and I'm going to say it again. And I'm going, if I have to put it in Sanskrit, I will put it in Sanskrit. We continue to have a male, pale, and stale ballot that does not adequately reflect the people to whom CASA is supposedly serving. And so if that sentiment cannot be expressed adequately, then no, I can't vote for it. And I don't want the vote cast on my behalf for the slate of directors that does not reflect the people who CASA is supposedly serving. My other question is, we are confirming our representative, but what is this for? What time period is this for? Can someone answer that for me?
Excuse me, I will step in here. It says here that the slate of directors nominated for council board seats are for the fiscal year 2021.
No, no, I know, but we're also confirming our designated representative in the alternates. So what time period is that for?
That, Vice President said it. That is for the calendar year. So every year when the board
Right.
president changes, that's when that selection is made.
So this is through the end of this year.
That's
so
correct.
it's through the end of this year, right?
Correct.
Okay. That was my question.
Okay, thank you, Vice President Sutter. I have no questions, so please take the roll.
President Alvarado,
Yes.
Vice President Sutter,
Yes, with my caveat.
Director Stanley,
Yes.
Director Weiner,
Yes.
Director Cepeda.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, next item, please.
Item 6B, adopt a resolution authorizing the general manager to enter into an agreement with Sonargo, Senegro WWT Inc. for temporary sledge dewatering, hauling, and disposal services for a total not to exceed $1,382,850.
Okay, who's giving us some information on this?
Good evening, President Alvarado and directors. This is Aaron Weiner. Excuse me, the Water Quality and Resource Recovery Department Manager. So I think Gina's going to run the slideshow for me. We've been before you several times over the last 6 or 8 months talking about dewatering and digesters, digester cleaning, digester assessments. And essentially what we're going to do, what we've done is we've made a decision in the last couple of weeks for several reasons to take our second and only remaining digester offline and go to temporary dewatering. So we have a presentation, a slideshow, and a lot of the rationale for that decision making is in the slideshow, and we'll get there in just a minute. I did want to say that the dollar figure, the 1.3 million roughly dollar figure on this is really a worst case. The way Senegro and other service providers of this type bid the work is based on labor, hours per day, tonnage of materials removed, and where they have to be hauled, the type of equipment they need to use in the process. And so we are, and I am working with Senegro on minimizing and actually using some of our own equipment. I'll give you one example. They rent a generator, which is fueled by diesel fuel to provide electricity for their process. We are intending to get them an electrical connection, which will avoid that cost. And that's just one example. So if the amount of solids that they ultimately have to remove and haul to landfill is lower, which we expect it'll be, those costs will also be reduced. So I just wanted to toss that out there, that really that 1.3 million is an inflated figure, a very conservative estimate, and I'm working very hard. We're working very hard to trim it down, and I will continue to do so. So that's really all I wanted to mention before jumping into the slideshow. The staff.
Did you have a couple pictures to put up?
I did. I just wanted to say before we go into the pictures, the staff report and the resolution are fairly comprehensive, I think. And so unless there's any questions on either of those documents, you know, we'll just jump right in. There were a couple pictures I wanted to show you first before the slideshow, though. Director Weiner?
Well, I'm interested in knowing the nature of the material that will be put into the landfill. So if you're going to talk about that in your slideshow, then I don't need to know now.
Yeah, I will get into that during the slideshow. Yes. Okay, so did you want to give me control, Gina?
I believe you've got it, don't you? Can you do
Okay.
share screen?
Can you see that picture?
No. Did you click share screen at the bottom of your screen?
I think I got it now.
Okay.
There we go. You can see that, I take it.
Yes.
And I did want to ask, am I coming through clearly? I noticed when some of the other folks were speaking earlier, it was a little broken up. You can hear me? Good.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
So this is Senegro's operation as it stands right now. So this is essentially what we're paying for. You've got vehicles, tanks, pipes, generators, trucks, a dewatering belt press, which I don't know, you can't really see very well here, but you can see the conveyor that goes up and it dumps into the truck. And so basically what we're pulling out of the plant is about 2 of these trucks per day. And just for kind of for reference, our treatment plant produces about 3,000 dry tons of biosolids a year. And as you know, those have gone to our lagoons previously in the form of the liquid sludge we send out there. So the other picture that I wanted to show you, bear with me for 1 second, please. Sorry, wrong one. I'll get it, I promise. This is a picture of our sludge lagoons, one of our sludge lagoons. And just as kind of a reminder, you know, there are 13 sludge lagoons, 4 are dedicated to Richmond. This is one of West County's lagoons, and there are 8 more like it. So there's a total of 9 sludge lagoons altogether. So what we've done by going to this temporary dewatering is that we're no longer feeding these 9 West County wastewater district sludge lagoons. So the material that would ordinarily have been going there from the digesters is now going essentially directly to a belt press, and then it will be going to landfill. So I just wanted to show you those couple of things, and you know, just kind of as a preface to jumping into the rest of the presentation, and I'm ready to go unless there's any questions.
No, please continue.
All right, so I've already kind of done the segue. Next slide, please. And really, I've already talked about the objective. And just a couple of, I'm sorry, go back one more if you would, Gina. I just wanted to talk about a couple of those terms, really. You know what anaerobic digestion is. I wanted to just mention that methane gas in concentrations between 4 and 15% mixed with air is explosive. I just wanted to let you know. I'm sure folks probably knew that or knew that it was explosive, but I wanted to toss that out there. And I also wanted to mention, just kind of go through this intrinsic safety concept. So electrical equipment that is manufactured and installed in areas that are potentially, you know, could have explosive gases, mining, petrochemical, that type of thing. Equipment is manufactured in a way that includes these standards for intrinsic safety. And what that means is that the electrical equipment does not spark or create heat above what could ignite a fuel source. And in modern installations, the electrical equipment is intrinsically safe. And that's all I wanted to say about that. I'm sure you know the rest of the items on there. So next slide, please. So this is just basically a timeline. I'm not going to go through all the details, but I did want to just note, especially that in October 2019, which is essentially about a month after I started, 6 weeks after I started, we really started to look closely at the digester system, the equipment that is part of the digester process. And there were some concerns that came out of the observations and operational problems that we were having at the time. So this just runs through the other items that I think you already know. Next slide, please, Gina. And then really this is what's happened in the last month or so. So on June 23rd, we experienced a second digester overflow, and you'll see what that looks like in a minute. In 10 days, and that's probably the fourth or fifth one we've had in the last 6 months. The next, I talked to management, to senior management that day, and I said, I really recommend that we consider going to temporary dewatering at this point for a variety of reasons, and you'll see those coming up. And then the next thing is that I contacted Senegro the next day, and within a week, essentially, they were on the ground and they had set up and were performing temporary dewatering for us. And I think it's important to note that that Senegro, being on the ground for us in less than a week, essentially, if we'd have gone with another service provider of this type, it would have taken weeks, if not months, to get somebody on the ground by the time they mobilized their equipment and came from Bakersfield, California, or wherever they might have been out of. So I think that's kind of relevant to the conversation here. And then finally, July 2nd, Carollo held a workshop with our staff, and we preliminarily reviewed their engineering findings, their assessment findings of the digester system. So the rest from here, I think, is pretty much slides and a little bit of discussion. Next one, please, Gina. Actually, there is one more set of words, and I think it's important to provide some of the preliminary findings from our discussions with Carollo and their preliminary assessment meeting with us. Electrical code issues, structural problems, seismic code issues, inadequate ventilation, and old and equipment that's in many cases beyond its useful life. Next slide, please. So I promised to show you what it looks like when a digester overflows, and it takes a lot of effort to clean up. There's a lot of hazards associated with it, and it's also, from a compliance standpoint, not a good, just not a good scenario. So the next slide, please, just shows a little bit of a different angle, and there's a couple of our maintenance staff. And there was probably 1,000 to 2,000 gallons of sludge that wound up on the ground, had to be cleaned up, took an awful lot of staff time and energy. Next slide, please. This is just showing you a little bit of the electrical equipment that is in our existing facility, our digester heat exchange building. And you can see on the right there, well, you can see the electrical panel on the left. It's from the, I think, earlier mid-1970s. And on the right, I think that's showing you the same panel towards the right of the right-hand picture. And it doesn't close all the way. It won't latch all the way. And another thing you can see there below that panel is a wall outlet on the wall, which is another code issue because those things can tend to spark. And the other thing here is that you have sludge pipes and gas pipes that crisscross through these rooms and in this space. Next slide, please. These are a couple of control panels that provide electrical and starters for some of the digester equipment. And on the left side, there is a new panel that was installed 3 years ago as part of our electrical upgrades. And on the right side is about a 40 or 45-year-old piece of equipment that powers other parts of our digester system. And I just wanted to show you that kind of for reference. Any questions at this point?
Why don't you finish the presentation, then we'll have questions.
All right, next slide, please. This is a picture of the digester dome on the outside, and you can see cracks and you can see seepage of rust from the rebar inside the cracks, and it's highly likely. So inside this dome, you have an 800,000 gallon tank with probably 700,000 or 600,000 gallons of sludge in it, digester sludge, and that's creating methane gas. So there's a pocket of methane gas probably on the top 15 feet or so of this digester that's drawn off and used for various things. But one of the things here is that the digester gas is leaking through these cracks as well because it's not sealed. Next slide, please. And this is a picture of that same dome from the inside of the digester when they were cleaning. This is looking straight up, probably about 45 feet roughly. And what we have and what the inspection and assessment has revealed is spalling concrete. That means it's flaking, it's falling apart, and there's also exposed rebar, which is the steel that's the structure of the dome. And that basically, that material falls into the sludge and falls into the tank. Next slide, please. And just a little bit more equipment here, and what you see is a lateral crack along a construction joint of the digester. Next slide, please. And more equipment in the digester control building. So the way this building is structured is you have, can you see my cursor? Oh, you can't see my cursor, I'm sorry. There's an electrical panel on the right-hand side of that. And that panel is attached to the digester wall. On the left is a boiler that heats water and heats the sludge in the digester. On the other left-hand side of that boiler is the other digester wall, And the wall away from you, facing you but far away from you, is one of the two other walls of the digester. Does that make sense? I'm telling you this for a reason. So the other piece in here is that you have lighting fixtures and other old electrical equipment, gas lines on the lower left side that are code problems and aging equipment problems. Next slide, please. This is what I was trying to explain in the previous slide. So on the right-hand side there, this is looking up from essentially the same position you were just looking at the previous slide. This is looking up at the ceiling. So on the right-hand side, you have the digester wall. And if you can see, there's a couple of 3 L brackets on the right-hand side. They're large brackets that have been used to tie the digester wall to the ceiling of this building. And there's a point here. The joint along the digester wall and the ceiling is called an expansion joint. And that is designed so that there is a little bit of give if there's an earthquake, if there's ground movement. So it's designed to move a little bit in the event of an earthquake. What somebody's done here in the past is they put these L brackets to tie the ceiling to the wall, so you've defeated the expansion joint. So obviously you have a seismic and a structural problem. And you can also see up between 2 of those L's, you've got some more spalling concrete. Next slide, please. And really, this is just a little bit of information about the digesters and the equipment. The digesters were installed in the 60s. And I'm sorry, I think it was in the late 60s, so around 1970. And most of the equipment in the 70s rather, to the mid 80s. And that's the newest equipment. There have been some replacements in the interim, some minor upgrades to equipment, but overall it's the same equipment. Next slide, please. And this is just another example of equipment that we have. This is a compressor that takes gas out of the digester, compresses the gas, puts it back into the bottom of the digester, and its purpose is to mix the digester contents. And you can see here you also have another plug and some piece of apparatus plugged into the wall socket. And you can tend to have gas and other things in this room in the atmosphere. Next slide, please. And this is one of the heat exchanger boilers, which takes sludge in on one side and creates hot water in the other side, heats the sludge and sends it back into the digester, and it's intended to maintain the digester at about 98 degrees Fahrenheit. Excuse me, next slide, please. And just more pictures, more shots of the structural issues. The left-hand picture is a hatch on the top of the digester, severely corroded and encrusted, needs to be replaced. And on the right-hand side, you're just looking at the piping, the gas piping that draws the gas off the digesters. And there are also other pieces of equipment up there, flame arresters, which are designed to eliminate the possibility of flame getting into the digester and causing an explosion. And again, that equipment is all original vintage 1970s. Next slide, please. And really just wanted to I think this is the last slide or close, just talk about a little bit about the options. Preliminary option number 1 is to seal cracks, replace some of the hardware on the outside of the digester. I think there's about 170 feet of cracks that need to be sealed. And then there's about 800 feet of pipe that needs to be replaced, including gas pipe that's corroding and structurally problematic. So we're thinking that if we go that route, it would be roughly $300,000 per digester. It's unclear if that, that's just an estimate, high level at this point. And that does not address the other systemic safety issues that we've walked through in the last few minutes. The second option at this point is a rehab of the existing digesters, which is replacing all the equipment that you've looked at over the last few minutes, piping, heat exchangers, mixing equipment, very preliminary cost of 9 to 10 million. That's very high level at this point. 12 to 18 months, I think that's conservative. I would say probably more like 24 to 30 months, but that's conservative and does not include any of the seismic work that would need to get done. It also only extends the useful life from 7 to 15 years, excuse me. And, we've already gotten, I think, about 50 years out of those digesters. So that 9 million plus seismic costs will get us another 7 to 15 years. And then the last item there is to build a new system. And we've talked about that. And that's one of the things that we're talking about with ENGIE, and we've been looking at as a scope expansion item for ENGIE. And again, you have the cost estimate, $15 to $18 million down there at the bottom for new digesters. Next slide. So before questions, I just wanted to close with just 1 or 2 quick thoughts. Really, the reason we took the second digester off a couple of weeks ago, well, the reasons I've talked about. We have safety concerns, we have concerns, we've had operational issues. We really wanted to just get 6 months to really have a close look at this whole thing and really plan a strategic path forward. That really considers all the safety issues and the potential client compliance issues, that we really need to think through before we, as we're going through and before we were to bring the existing digester system back online. So that's kind of where we are, and that summarizes the presentation. And I would just ask Andrew if there's anything that I missed that he wanted to mention, because we had talked about a few things before we go into questions.
No, I think you did a nice presentation, Aaron. The only thing I would add is that, as Aaron mentioned, that it gives us 6 months to take a look at this and do it intelligently and professionally. Part of the problem that was happening also when we were having the overflows and the other problems, if we continued to limp along in that fashion, we risk a series of cascading failures downstream from the digester as well. And it's taking an enormous amount of energy and time of the maintenance staff. So what we have to look at here is there's 3 options that Aaron laid out, but there's also one other possibility is that what we might need to do, and we'll know more after we get in further into the digester analysis, is that it might not make sense to do the temporary repair either, the $300,000 one, that because we might have the same failure rate problems with the digesters. Although we will have improved the safety somewhat, we'll still have some significant problems. So we might we might be in a position where we're going to have to do for a relatively long period of time sort of this temporary measure where we're using the belt press and we're, trucking the sledge off instead of using the lagoons. And if we do that, we're going to make sure that we go out with an RFP and try to keep those costs down as low as we can. But that might also be an alternative that we have to seriously consider. And we'll be back with more discussion on that once we know. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that last one there, Aaron.
No, that's great. Thank you, Andrew.
All right, so let's start with questions or comments. Director Stanley.
Aaron, one, can you send us the slides that you just showed so that we can have them?
Sure.
Also, great presentation. Thank you for that. So all of my buttons are now pushed, and I'm semi-hysterical. Visions of shit blowing all over the place and people dying or getting hurt. So right now we have one digester that's working.
We've essentially taken it offline for the reasons and the concerns you just described, and our concerns, which align with our concerns.
Okay, so we have no digesters working right now.
Right. I would just qualify that by saying that Senegro is dewatering out of our second digester, and we are in the process of killing the biology in it by feeding it chemical. And we expect to have that done in the next week or two.
Okay, so at the beginning of your presentation, you said something about worst case scenario about this dewatering thing, and my position, and I'm letting you know, is I don't care how long it takes to, and how much money it takes to not put our digesters back online. I think that we give you the 6 months that you're asking for, that you all come up with a plan that keeps safety as absolutely at the top, and that we are innovative and maybe forward thinking about, what we're replacing things with. Cost, of course, is a factor, but safety and, what is the lifespan, and, let's not skimp if, at this point, another $100,000 on something that's many millions of dollars. I'm go with the Cadillac version myself. And so I want to give you the time to figure out exactly what it is that we need and we're the safest. I don't care how much it costs to keep this dewatering thing going on, because I'm horrified at the conditions right now, and I don't want anybody hurt. I don't want the environment hurt, and I don't want to take on any more. I don't want to take on the risk and the liability. So that's my position. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Stanley. Director Weiner.
Yeah, I did have the one question regarding the difference in the material that is dried in our beds and the material that is now going to landfill.
So I mentioned that we're still pulling out of the digester sludge that is still mainly digested. It's very similar to what we've been sending to the lagoons. As in the next few weeks, as I mentioned, I'm trying to think of a better word than kill, as we deactivate the biological process in the digester, we're going to transition to basically dewatering a blend of two sludge waste streams that come out of the plant. It's thickened waste sludge and primary sludge. And it's very raw. It's a combination of things. It's not the digester. When we put these sludges into the digester, it stays in there from 15 to 30 days. And the whole purpose of the digester is to biologically degrade that sludge and to further stabilize it for dewatering and landfill. So the sludge that we're taking out of the process does not have the benefit, will not have the benefit of having being digested. So it's a more raw form of sludge. So when it goes to landfill, it'll essentially decompose in the landfill, and the particular landfill we're using, Potrero in Sassoon, has a gas recovery system on it. So I guess that's a benefit if you want to look at it that way. We're not sending it to the lagoons anymore where it would off gas into the atmosphere. There's going to be some incidental of that activity, but now that it's going to landfill, we're hoping that it will be captured.
And then but you are looking as one of your options at replacing the same process.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And then
we've got to get back to that. We've got to get back to anaerobic digestion. It's a part of our whole plan and energy balance, scheme, if you will.
Great. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. It was really good. I wanted to say the picture of the overflow ought to be accompanied with 2020, because I believe that looks a lot like 2020 to me. Yeah, I agree with Director Stanley. We need to take the route of total replacement and bringing it to modern standards. I'd just like to mention to the board and the public that that whole plant was built with federal money, mostly federal money, in the 70s. And that was at the beginning of the clean water revolution. And so what that looks like is replicated in every small wastewater district in California and every small wastewater district in the United States. They will have the very same look and feel of their digesters, because no one had enough money on their own. No ratepayers have enough money on their own to replace those things and build those things. We may be lucky enough to do so. I think it's a touch and go question because it's quite expensive, and we haven't budgeted, and we have so many other capital projects in the same built in the same time frame that need to be replaced. And so I think it behooves all of us as voters and all of us as board members and all of our staff to lobby our federal people to get those funds put together for infrastructure and get on the list for infrastructure, so that everybody in the United States can afford to refurbish their wastewater plants, because they were all built on federal funding. And we've spent millions of dollars to maintain them, but they've reached the end of their life. And it's a huge problem nationwide, and we're just experiencing one little part of it. And also, it's also a part of the revolution to destroy the federal government's in size. This is the byproduct of that as well. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, Director Weiner. Director Spada.
Yeah, Aaron, thank you so much. Great presentation. And just for Director Stanley, the presentation is part of the board packet. It was included in there if you want to take a look at it on there too. I have a few. Do we know, and I'm not sure if you covered this and I just went over my head here, but do we know why it ended up overflowing? Is it just because it's so old that it just stopped? Do we not have something in there that says once it reaches a certain max, make a noise or something? Or
yeah, that's a good question, Director Zepeda. One of the things is I think we've talked a few times in the last couple of months about problems that we have with the transfer lines that take sludge from the two primary digesters to our secondary digesters. They're old lines as well. One of the things, as you know, we found we took out 167 tons from digester 1 of rags and grit, which is very likely mirrored in the bottom of digester 2. It's very likely that same volume of written rags is in digester 1, and it just goes in, it goes into solution, and it'll plug up the overflow box and the pipes, and that's what you have.
Thank you for that. And the reason we decided to not put the sludge into the lagoon is because we don't have the capacity there, or what?
As I mentioned, in response to Director Wiener's question, the sludge that will ultimately be dewatering and hauling to landfill is not going to be digested, which means it has a component of primary sludge, which contains fecal matter and other nasties and things, and you can't send that into an open basin. It just creates all kind of vector problems and all kinds of things. So
got it. Thank you for that. And do we know of any of the sludge that did overflow, that any of that end up going into our sewer system and into the bay?
No, it's all captured on site. Everything is captured on site.
Perfect. And I agree with Director Wiener, making the process better. And I want to add a little bit on there too. Can we, since we're going to start from scratch, more or less, right, building a brand new one, can we make it better? Can we figure out a way to generate energy from a new digester? So we know that we have certain items that it releases that we can then turn into energy. Can we, I remember Director Wiener had a presentation from his committee where, if I'm not mistaken, where we can turn the, it's escaping me what the term was, but the gases into energy. Can we start incorporating some of that?
Yes, that is all part of our plan and all part of what we've been working with Engie on for about the last 8 or 10 months. Is upgraded. So if we go with new digesters, we'll have a much better system. There are upgrades already included in Engie's proposal. It includes using the methane gas for cogeneration, and we will utilize that electricity. It also recovers the heat from the cogen engines and dries the sludge further with that heat, allowing us to haul less water, which costs money. So there's a whole bunch of trickle down things that are already in the works in that regard.
Oh, great to hear. And I don't know if we already have or not, but also Director Wiener asked the GM, and I also got the newsletter too, but from CASA, it talks about HR2, where they're going to be putting, I believe it was 17 trillion into infrastructure, and some of that could go to wastewater districts. I don't know if we can write a letter to say, let's get some of this money going. So hopefully the president approves it and we can eat some of that up here. In regards to your options, oh, yes.
I was just going to say, yes, we are participating in that. We've sent letters of support, and we are watching any of those opportunities that are made available.
Thank you, Lisa. And Aaron, sorry, maybe I'm just not getting it here, but the page where you have the 3 options, are we to sort of select one of them, or are you going to do all of them? Is that what we're trying to do? Is all of them together and then?
No. If we were to, we're working through, and Carollo, as I mentioned in the presentation, is in the process of finalizing their report, their formal assessment report, and that'll drive our decision. We could go with option 1, which would just be a Band-Aid, and it'll take us 5 or 6 months to do that. If we do option 1, that's just to get us to be able to restart one or both of the digesters, limp along until we execute on number 2 or 3.
Okay, thank you. And if we do go with number 3, at maximum, it looks like possibility of 18 million. I don't know if we have that necessarily in the budget. Would we have to figure out additional funding from other places, or where will we get some of this funding from? Have we thought about that?
Aaron, I can respond to that.
Please do. Thanks, Andrew.
Director Cepeda, we'll be back at the next meeting on August the 5th, and we're going to be doing a presentation, a work session on the comprehensive energy project. that Aaron's referred to a couple of times. And we've been in discussions with NG, and we're refining that scope, and that's what we want to talk to the board about. And one component of that will be the replacement of the digesters. And it's just part of a much larger project. And in that presentation, Justin will address your question directly, in that we won't have all the final numbers, but we will have a pretty good idea of what that total project cost will be, and we can address what kind of funding we have on reserve, how much we'd have to borrow, how many years, what other capital projects are we replacing with this project that we had planned for and funded in outgoing years, et cetera. So we will address that and talk about how we could fund this and pay for it.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Aaron.
Can I just add one more thing to that to Andrew? And I'm sorry, you might have touched on this, but originally when we were talking to NG, the digesters weren't part of what we asked them to look at. But because of what's been developing over the last 3 or so months, we've added that piece to what we've asked them to look at, the digester replacement.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you. No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cepeda. Vice President Sutif?
I think the biggest question is, so understanding this is more of an emergency situation, so it wasn't contemplated during our capital budget, correct?
We did have some component of digester work in the capital plan. I don't know if anybody else has what the time frame is or the dollar amount. We could get that to you, but there was something for digester work in the plan.
Yeah, I can take that. So in our, this is Michael Savannah, Infrastructure and Planning Department Manager. When we put together our capital plan, we had no idea what we would find inside the digester. So we set money aside to do the cleaning and assessment, which we completed. And after completing that, we found all of these other problems. We knew when we did the plan that we would need to come back with a larger project, but we had no idea what it would be at the time.
Sorry. Okay, yeah, and I think that's what I was looking for on that one. And how will this affect other projects that we still have to do in our maintenance and upkeep if we don't get outside funding? Because we have to take care of this. So if we have to divert funds from our capital projects to take care of this. And I realize you might not have the answer right now, but taking care of this, and so what I'm interested in, if we have to divert money from the capital plans to take care of this, or capital projects to take care of this, how will that affect other projects?
Justin,
have you thought about that yet?
I'm sorry, Vice President Sutif. Justin, did you want to take a crack at that?
I mean, it is we haven't got into that level of detail yet. There is, as Andrew has discussed, we will be talking a little bit more about some of the projects with the NG and the August 5th board meeting. We don't necessarily have an answer for that right now. This is something that we're actively working on and coming out, and we'll be coming up with a plan. This is kind of over a couple-month process. We'll be able to come up with a plan and on how we would finance and pay for all these projects that need to get done.
I realize that you wouldn't have an answer right now. I think I'm just kind of putting it out there. That's what the backup plan would be if we're not able to outside funding. I just kind of almost kind of thinking ahead of time if we have to divert a different project in order to take care of this one, and then is there something else that we need to be thinking about? Are other projects similar to this one that may be coming up on the horizon that we need to be paying attention to that may become as critical and crucial as this one that we need to be keeping an eye on? I would like us to really be paying attention to that. But thank you, great presentation. But I think that we had a presentation, I think Michael gave us one on some projects that we should be paying, that I think they were color coded on things that we need to be keeping our eye on. And I think it's time we had another one of those presentations so that we keep our eye on, focused on things that may be coming up that are going to be high dollar value, that are capital projects that are going to be taking money in the budget. So I would like to just keep our eye on that. So thank you, President Alvarado. I'm done, but thank you very much. Good presentation.
Thank you.
Vice President Sudduth, we are planning an update to the board on the status of capital projects, and I think what you're talking about are the projects that we identified that needed to be, that were not currently funded, but were the issues that we know about. So we will also address that in that presentation. Michael is working on a date for that. So you'll be seeing that in the next coming up.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Vice President Sudduth. I too am very concerned about this digester situation, so I'm happy to hear that we're going to be getting an update shortly on the actual capital projects at the fund. So, okay, let's take a note. Thank you. I'm sorry. Has the item been? The item needs to be first.
There's
garble.
So can I get a motion on the item?
Can't understand you.
I'll move the item.
Okay, that item's been moved. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
All right, item's been moved and seconded. Please take the roll.
President Alvarado.
Yes.
Vice President Sudduth.
Yes.
Director Stanley.
Yes.
Director Weiner.
Yes.
Director Cepeda. Director Cepeda.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, next item, please.
Item 7, information reports. 7A, presentation by staff on the conclusion of the 4-year infiltration and inflow study of the district's collection system.
All right. Who's presenting on this?
This is Michael Savannah, the Infrastructure and Planning Department Manager. I'll be presenting on this as soon as someone gives me permission to share.
Can you do it now, Michael?
I believe so. Good evening. So this evening I have with myself, Ken Dybert, Engineer 3 here at the district, Nicole and Oliver, who are both consultants with VNA that helped us out with this I&I study. The purpose of this study was for us to essentially gather information about the I&I that we have in the district, figure out the areas that we had the most I&I, look at our sewer capacity, and then get some recommendations from the consultants about future investigations and additional areas that we need to look into, as well as mitigation measures of our I&I. I'd like to just take a step back and talk about what I&I is. So I&I is essentially stormwater that gets into our sewer system. And if you recall from our CSO presentation that we did, or our collection system presentation we did several months back, I&I is bad, and it's not something that we want in our system. The reason it's bad is because it overwhelms our collection system, and we end up with overflows in the street. We end up with the public being exposed or potentially exposed to sewage coming up out of our manholes, and also them not being able to utilize their sewer to send waste to our system. It also overflows, in some of the most extreme cases, our plant. It overwhelms the capacity of our plant, and then we have illicit discharges, which come with all kinds of fines as well as bad environmental impacts. So we want to make sure that we're not capturing stormwater and we're keeping as much of it out as we possibly can. One other thing that it does is it reduces our capacity, therefore making it risky, if not more than risky, to have a lot of the development go on that we want to support in the district. So it limits our ability to support the development. This is a graphic that should look very familiar to you all. You've seen this before. It demonstrates I&I and shows you a number of ways that you get I&I into the system. Some of it has to do with the types of manhole covers that we have, the condition of manholes, the conditions of our sewer lines, whether or not we have roots getting into them, conditions of private sewer laterals, whether or not there are illegal connections from downspouts, downspouts at people's homes that connect into our sewer. Down here on the bottom left corner, you'll notice there's a graphic that shows different flows between average dry weather and average wet weather, and you'll see these huge spikes in the wet weather sections due to I&I. The difference between this blue spike and the green spike in the dry weather is attributed to the I&I from stormwater getting into our system. What we're doing about I&I, so we have a number of things going on in the district in terms of plans to mitigate the I&I in our system. We have over $30 million over the next 5 years allocated to I&I related projects. We have a spot repair program that we use to fix any pipe defects that we find while we're doing our collection system CCTV assessments, or if we find that we have a really bad segment of pipe through other means, we use our spot repair program to repair those pipes. There's some recommendations from the I&I study that we're going to be implementing soon, some of it being some smoke testing and some other types of testing. We have our pipes program that the board recently voted for or voted to approve, that will allow us to provide incentives to residential and other types of businesses that have laterals and have lateral issues in order to help us bring them into compliance. And if you recall, that funding has some incentives that further incentivize the high I&I areas. So those high I&I areas are defined, and you'll see very shortly they're defined in this report. So we're using this report to define where the higher incentives are at. Sewer lateral inspection and enforcement are things that we are doing on a regular basis at the sale of a home, but also through renovations. When residents or homeowners want to do renovations to their homes, they need to go to the city or county and get a building permit. They're sent to us first, and we use that as an opportunity to make sure that their laterals are in compliance. And finally, there's the sewer main and manhole inspection programs that we're currently implementing in the organization. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Ken Dybert to take the next section of the presentation to speak to you about the actual I&I study.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening to the Board of Directors. And can we go to the next slide?
Yep.
Who is actually controlling the slides? Because you don't.
I am.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Go ahead, Ken.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the same slide. Can you please advance the slide?
Oh, I am advancing it. My apologies, you guys. You aren't looking at what I'm looking at.
I see a 4-year rainfall study.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to see that. For some reason, I'm still looking at what we're doing about I&I.
No, so we're on the monitoring plan slide.
It's the strangest thing, but it's like my screen is not showing it. What can I do here? Let's see.
Well, this slide, Ken, you can let us know when you catch up. I'll try to go through, and you can jump in if I miss anything.
Yeah, I can't see the whole, but I mean, I could look at my own version of the report on my desktop, I suppose.
You can do that, and then you can just let me know when you want to go to the next slide. We're on the monitoring plan slide.
Okay. So, yes, we wanted to just briefly review the parameters of the monitoring plan. And again, I can't read the slide, so I'm going to try to find it in the meantime. Give me a moment here.
So in 2015 and 16, we did basins 3, 4, and 6. In 2016 and 17, we did basins 7 and 8. In 2017 and 18, we did basin 15. And in the segment of 2018 and 19, we wrapped up the study with the basins 24 and 26. We're on the next slide now, Ken. We're talking about this was the 5-year rainfall summary, and this just shows the different amounts of rain that we picked up during the I&I study. Are you caught up, Ken?
Yeah, the reason I included the rainfall graph was just to show graphically that we did get a lot of good rainfall to study, and so a drought wasn't an issue, and we actually all the years we received more than the average amount of rainfall during the study.
In this next slide, we're just showing the areas of the basins. Ken, do you want to talk a little bit about what a basin is and help everyone understand what we mean when we're talking about basins?
Yes, thank you. I was talking with Oliver at B&A, about they define a basin as one way, every line upstream of the flow meter, okay? And you would say, well, then I guess the basin depends on where they put the flow meter. But we have 26 basins in the district, and they were established by the starting point being any main branch off of, the collection system. So every tributary area is considered a basin, if that's helpful. The idea of maybe a bunch of small creeks feeding into a larger, drainage system is a similar analogy. And then you'll notice in the exhibits going forward that there are sub-basins that V&A created on their own for the purposes of breaking these areas, these basins, into more manageable study areas. So they have their own methods for breaking that up, but we go by the 26 basins as far as we refer to them generally.
Thank you, Ken. And the sub-basins that Ken is talking about, you'll see here, you'll see 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D, up through 4E and F. Those are all sub-basins of Basin 4. The purpose of this is to show you the areas that we studied and when we studied them. So these next couple of maps will just show you the areas that we studied and what time of year which year we studied them. This slide is about the conclusions that we found during the 2015-2016 study time. You want to take that, Ken?
Okay. Oh, the conclusions. Well, I can't read them because I can't see the slide. But again, we did try to simplify the conclusion for the purposes of this study. And so, in general, what does it say that Area 26 was definitely observed to be exceedingly high area, along with other years. I don't want to spoil a surprise. But I believe this year identified Basin 26 and maybe 24 as areas where there was significant infiltration and should be looked at even closer. But an area where we would want to look at replacing pipes and laterals.
Thanks, Ken. And as you'll notice, it talks about the Chelsea area or Chesley area and the fact that there's high I&I in that area. And based on this information, we'll use this, and we've actually used this to prioritize some of our upcoming pipe projects. This next slide shows the areas that we did in 2016 and 2017. That's Basin 7 and Basin 8.
Yeah.
Interesting enough, Basin 7, before we finished our report at the end of year 3, we were pretty certain that we would know what at least the second highest INI area or high INI basin was, and that was identified as Basin 7. So if you recall, we came to the board and we got funding to do some additional what's on our capital improvement plan as mandated pipes. That's a bucket of money that we are using to address the highest INI areas in the district. So we've started already the design work for Basin 7 replacement. And I think as it turned out at the end of the report, Basin 7 was one of our highest INI areas. So in 2017 and 2018, we concentrated on Basin 15, which you'll notice is a pretty sizable basin, which is why we did one basin this year as opposed to the two that we had done in previous years. In 2018 and 2019, we did Basin 24 and Basin 26. These basins are near the Arlington area as well as off of San Pablo Avenue. There are some recommendations that came based on the hydrograph results. And I would like to invite Oliver and Nicole to help us with talking about the recommendations that they've made based on the hydrograph results.
Okay, this is Oliver with VNA. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So if anyone wants me to go into what a synthetic hydrograph is, I can, if you want me to. Otherwise, I'll just go into the conclusions. Basically, we came up with just a sort of overview. We can develop synthetic hydrographs are a way of normalizing all the flow data from different years. That way we can sort of compare, do an apples to apples comparison. And let me look at, I need to look at my own map here real quick. But basically we found a number of basins. A lot of these basins were actually in the last year of study, Basin 26 and 24. And basically mostly Basin 26, 24, and 7 and 8 from that second year of study that were the basins that had the highest inflow, which the inflow, so, the difference between, you have two components with INI, inflow and infiltration. Inflow is the direct sources, your rain gutters, maybe your cross connections to storm drains, that kind of thing. And those give you your quick spikes. Those can sometimes cause the overflows because it's a very fast, quick response, can overwhelm a system. But the other reason why it's helpful sometimes to look at inflow is that sometimes those are things that are easily remedied, because maybe it's just, sometimes it's as simple as replacing manhole covers, removing cross connections from, illicit connections that are on private property, that kind of thing, or cross connections to storm drains. And those can, take big chunks of clear water out of your system. So that's why we tend to concentrate on those first. Infiltration is basically, you've got maybe high groundwater, and that's water that's coming in through cracks, through little holes in pipes. And the one thing with infiltration that's kind of lumped in with that is what comes from laterals, because that's actually where a significant portion of the INI that comes into a system. For most districts, it can be anywhere between 40 and 70% of their INI is coming from private sewer laterals. So that's why lateral programs are, it takes a while to work through the system, but it's one of your best ways of reducing your INI. So basically, what we came up with, after all of our analysis, was that Basin 26 in particular had really high rates of inflow. Some of the highest rates we saw throughout the entire study. And basically the entire basin 26 is worth looking at in terms of doing some smoke testing or doing some nighttime I&I reconnaissance, which I can go into more detail if you'd like. Basin 24, there was really only one area that was a substantial. There's this area 26 and 24E, and it actually winds up being sort of at the west end of, what is this road, Letia Road, and it's a, it looks like a distribution facility, or I'm not sure what it is. It's some kind of large private, there's lots of tractor trailers and stuff parked there, but it had really high rates of inflow, so that is potentially an indication they might have some area drains hooked up, or something else going on that may, it might be something, just do a quick smoke test on the property and see if you find anything like that. Basins 7 and 8 were also very high rates of inflow. I think it was mentioned that Basin 7 there's some, I guess, some pipeline replacement work that's going to be happening. So that's good. So that's, I'm trying to see.
I think that's great, Oliver. I don't know that we need to go into much more detail than that.
Yeah.
Essentially what we're trying to show here is that we found some areas of severe I&I, and we were identifying which basin they were in, as well as what we found, and prioritized them in these 6 sort of priority areas that we will use when we prioritize our pipe projects moving forward. The next steps after this are to evaluate the testing recommendations that VNA has provided to us in the report, and to use this report to inform our pipe priorities moving forward. A couple of other things that we'll do are there is some smoke testing that Oliver was just talking about, and one of the things that we're trying to do when we do the smoke testing is locate illegal connections to our lines, where people have connected the downspouts from their roof gutters into our lines. The smoke will come out of the roof gutter, identifying for us that that is connected to our main. One of the other things that we'll do is we'll utilize this to do some sort of targeted marketing of the pipes program to the highest I&I areas in the district, to try and use those incentives to get people to fix their laterals and reduce what we can assume is 40 to 70% of the I&I that's in our system. And again, we're not going to get all of that immediately, but we're going to try and target that because it's one of the high I areas that we get I&I in our system. So at this point, I'd like to open up to any questions that anyone may have.
Okay, let's start with Director Stanley, please. Director Stanley? Is Director Stanley still with us?
He appears to be muted.
Okay, I guess we'll come back to her.
Hello?
Okay, now we can hear you. Go ahead. Director Stanley, question?
Okay. Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Michael, just checking, the colors on these maps, they're just to help delineate the boundaries of a basin. Is that correct?
Yes, and these basins were identified by VNA for the purposes of this study. So when you're reading the study and they talk about Basin 7B, we can look at this and it delineates the area. We don't use these areas for anything else in the district.
Okay.
Can I add that the map is actually a temperature map, so the colors have significance, and there's a legend up in the corner so that the brightest red, I think, indicates the heat of the intensity of the infiltration. So there is a scheme to the color scheme. Yeah.
Okay, Ken. I am probably the least technical the most technically challenged. So this going back and forth business is confusing to me. So I'm not going to try it while I'm trying to talk to you right now, but when I looked at it earlier, I didn't see the key of these colors. So if somebody can send that to me at some... But where I'm trying to go with my question is VNA created these maps, and what I want to be able to do is to understand if the colors have some significance, then I want to know what that is. But mostly I want to be able to zoom in and out of the maps that are the most highly 26, 24, 7, and 8, so I can see the streets as to where the boundaries are and feel like I can confidently understand where the locations are. And then I love the pipes program, but I know that one of these sections is over in the North Richmond area. And I know that that community is economically challenged. So putting together a PR program and saying, okay, this is what your laterals are and you're responsible for them is all well and good. But if somebody's told that their portion of something is going to be a couple $1,000 or even $1,000, they might not be able to handle that. So that's, and I guess this is a future agenda item, but I'm just saying it now. I want to figure out a way to find somebody who will help people finance their portion of this stuff. So one that we benefit, but also that they benefit as part of this program. So I want to be able to see the maps, understand the maps, and I want to understand how we can help those in our community that we serve. Besides the pipes program, if they still can't afford that, how can we assist them or find them assistance? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Stanley. Director Weiner?
Yeah, thank you for the report. I've been awaiting it, and it's good to see that we've identified problem areas and we can attack our I&I problem now. I know it's been an issue, and we had some heavy rains when we had some terrible overflows, and I'd like to see an end to that. And I appreciate that we're on the cusp of starting that repair, and that excites me. I wanted to piggyback on top of what Director Stanley had to say, and I thought I saw on the agenda, I thought I saw a list of ideas on, charging, fixing the pipes, and then paying for it. The board would pay for it, or the district would pay for it, and then the ratepayers would be, their homes would be a lien put on them. And I thought I saw that in this presentation somewhere. Is that true or not true?
I don't think that's in this presentation.
Okay. Because along with Director Stanley, systematic racism has kept wealth out of the hands of black and brown people, mostly black people. And if we were to add to that with a lien, I would think that would not be a good idea. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Director Weiner, what you're talking about is a previous discussion regarding the ordinance that allows for us, if a lateral is out of compliance, we have the ability to fix it and lien the property. So I think that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, I thought I saw it in the agenda. I thought it was at this item that we were.
No, I think it was a previous discussion.
All right, so $1 late.
All set, Director Weiner?
That's it.
Thank you. Director Spada?
Great presentation. Thank you for that. My only question, do we know what might be causing some of this I&I? Is it just age of the pipes? Is it maybe location of the pipes? Is there some seismic movement? Is it development around the area that might be causing some of the pipes to break? I know some of it is caused by people connecting their pipes into ours, but any of the other cracks, is it just age? Is that what's happening?
I think that's one component of it. There's a number of, so I&I is going to get into pipes through unsealed pipes, so bad pipes that have cracks or breaks in them or bad joints, or illegal connections. And it may be our main lines that are in ill repair, or it may be laterals. So it's just a matter of investigating those and figuring out which the problems are and then attacking those. So everything that you mentioned could potentially be an issue, except I'm not really sure that development is going to add to that.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions. Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you, Director Cepeda. Vice President Sedif?
Thank you for the presentation. I'm glad to see you have a plan. Good job. Thank you. Nothing to add.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Sedif. I also want to thank you guys for the presentation. Very well done. Very informative. Next item, please.
Item 7B, receive the general manager's report for the months of May and June 2020.
Okay.
So I don't have any comments. It'd just be if there are any questions on the report, I can answer those.
All right, let's start with Director Stanley. Any questions?
Yes, I have some questions. Just a moment. Are we able to put new pipes in the ground right now or not? What is the status of that?
Yes, I did respond. For the record, Director Stanley sent several questions in advance, and this is one of the questions. We did address that, but yes, the pipe projects have resumed. All construction has resumed.
Okay. Then no, I don't have anything else.
Thank you, Director Stanley. Director Weiner.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. One has to do with the revenues and expenses, particularly capital improvement expenses. And I just want to be sure that I'm reading this correctly. What I see here is we budgeted, in 2019, we were under budget, and so we increased our reserves. And then in 2020, we increased our budget past our revenues, and we're going to reduce our reserves by 23 mil. And we're almost done with 2020, and it looks like we've missed the mark by 28 million bucks. So we're, instead of reducing our reserves by 23 million, we're going to add our reserves, add into our reserves of 5 million. Does that make sense? Is that what I'm reading? Is that true?
Justin, do you want to answer?
Yes, yeah, Director Weiner, I can talk to that. That is correct the way that you're reading it. The expenditures for the capital have not been as quickly as possible, as anticipated. I know Michael is working with his staff to come up with their project delivery system, and I know very quickly we will be spending a lot of that capital money. But that is correct. Your reading is correct.
So we'll begin to see a drawdown on our reserves 21, 22 or 2021?
I can't say for certain, but I know that there are in the works. There's several projects out to bid right now that will be going to the board in the next several months, and that will be several $1 million of project work. And we're working through with staff. We will start spending significantly more in fiscal year 2021 and 2022. I would anticipate that we would continue, delivering on the capital projects. But I can't say for certain right now. But this is we will start spending significantly more in the next several years.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And then I have one question on our check register. Item Burke, Williams, and Sorensen. What was that for? And what was that for?
Those are the policy review for the board policies and procedures, as well as all of the administrative review we've been doing on our personnel policies and several other policies.
So this included the board policy, but not exclusively the board policy?
Correct. We did as I've mentioned, we did a review of all policies, so the personnel policies, as well as our financial policies, and then the board policies and procedures was one of the 68 policies we had reviewed.
And in previous times, would say last year, we were doing before our board attorney resigned. Was he involved in policy overview as well?
He never did any policy review in the 4.5 years that I have been here, and most of the policies that we see haven't been reviewed since the 90s or much prior to that time. So I don't know if he was involved. He was never involved in any of the time. We never had a discussion about, he was aware of the policies and procedures review, but I don't know that he participated because most of the policies had been out of date for many, many years and don't look like they've been used before.
Yeah, that was something new to your tenure to go over those.
Right.
Okay. That was my 2 questions on the GM report.
Thank you. Director Cepeda, please.
Sorry, trying to go back and forth. Lisa, good report. I don't have a question, just a congratulations to Mr. Toscano, who is getting promoted to treatment plan operator. So just congrats to him. That's
Well,
it.
Since you brought that up, I would just like to remind the board that we are one of the very few districts that actually has an operator and training program where our operator and training employees are actually paid. Most of them are unpaid. So that is something unique that I recommended to the board, and the board approved, and we're sort of leading the way in that. And that's a really positive thing that we've done with the OIT position.
Thank you for that. That is it. Other than that, a good report. I like what's on there. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cepeda. Vice President Sutter.
Director Cepeda, you lobo. You stole it. You stole it. Same thing. So, good report. Congratulations to our promotees. Good job. I'm glad we did approve that program. It looks like it's going well. So thank you. I'm good. Thank you, President Alvarado. I'm good.
Thank you, Vice President Sutter. I too want to congratulate the young man that's going to be going into his new position. It's a great program that we have, And do we advertise that program on our website, Lisa?
Well, we advertised the position when it was opened. It's not necessary. I mean, the OIT program is not unique to West County. It's something in the industry. It's just a little bit unique that we actually have it as a paid position versus most agencies have it as an unpaid position.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item, please.
Item 7C, receive the Board Attorney's Statement of Services for services provided in the month of June 2020.
All right, next item, please.
Item 8, matters from staff, general manager, attorney. 8A, staff, general manager, attorney comments, communications, report on issues or matters pertaining to the overall operations of the district.
I do not have any comment. So if anybody from the ELT, I think Justin does.
I do have one. I'm going to just share my screen real quickly just to remind the board. Let's see if I can have it up here. Let's see. That the board about a year ago, here we are, passed a resolution that canceled certain meetings in the months of August, September, January, just January, August, September, and December of each year. So I would just like to remind the board that we will have our board meeting on August 5th, but then we will be taking a break, and we will not have a regular board meeting until September 16th. So I'd just like to remind the board that.
All right, well, in the interim, if we do need to have a special meeting during that time, we can do that. So that's always an option.
Correct.
Any other reports from staff?
This is Aaron. I just wanted to just mention one thing. You just talked a little bit about Marco Toscano and his promotion, and whenever we get past this COVID thing and we all get to mingle again, he's a really, really good find, and we're lucky, and it is really shows the benefit of our OIT program, and hope folks get a chance to meet him and talk to him a little bit. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Any other? Next item, please.
Item 9, matters from members of the board. 9A, meeting reports, reports on committee activities, conferences, seminars, and meetings pertaining to the overall operations of the district.
All right, let's start with Director Stanley.
I have nothing, thank you.
Director Weiner.
I have nothing.
Director Spada.
Nothing to report.
Vice President Sutter.
But of course I do.
And of course.
For those of you who are paying any attention, the legislature just ended its session this past week, and they're going to be on break until further notice. It was a busy few weeks, and so they just pushed out a few bills that may be of interest to us. But the biggest one, we're still waiting on a few environmental bills that are lingering, including the one for infrastructure. So I'm still monitoring it and keeping an eye on it, my right eye, because it's my good one. So I'll let you know what happens if we can get it through. It's still on the Senate Appropriations Committee, so we hope that we can get it through when they go back into session. One of the biggest bills that we've ACA, it was ACA 5, and now it was given a number in California, Proposition 16, which will repeal Prop 209. It's a big bill, makes a big difference on all levels. You would think it only affects education, but it doesn't. It affects everything we do, including what's happening. It will affect everything we do, including our wastewater district and everything. It trickles down in every aspect of life. If you haven't been participating in what's happening in the census, I suggest you pay more attention to it, because that will have a profound effect on what's going on in our monies that will be allocated to our district as well. And the last thing is I've been paying close attention, and I've actually been participating in budget hearings for Contra Costa County and the allocation of funds coming from the state with the clean water and environmental protection. So I will keep you posted, and I'll actually send a written report on that. But those are very important bills that we should be following and tracking. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vice President Sutter. I have nothing, so next item, please.
Item 9B, good of the order, report on events and activities which may be of interest to members of the board and community members.
Okay, Director Stanley.
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Director Weiner.
I have nothing.
Thank you. Director Spada.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Vice President Sutter.
All this time, you guys have nothing. The county, again, the Contra Costa County budget hearings are happening. They just had one Tuesday. They will be having another one coming up August 5th, I believe. And no, 4th. August 4th. I would suggest that everybody be paying attention to those. It makes a big difference in how much money is allocated to our county. Again, there's the state water board is having its meetings. I will send the schedule to Ms. Lisa. If you get a chance to pay attention to those meetings, all of you, not just the board, but staff as well. Those are very interesting meetings and hearings as well. They're public hearings. But the State Water Board is not just about drinking water, but it also, they pass bills and legislation that affect the wastewater industry. So I would suggest that if you can attend those meetings, that you do. Pay attention to the legislation that comes down that affects what we do and how we do it, but also any monies that are allocated for what we do. They also have been very good at passing rules dealing with what's happening with COVID and the CARES Act. And they're having meetings coming up next week and next month. So I will send that information to Ms. Lisa. If you did not sign up for some of the CASA and CSDA webinars, there are some really good ones coming up. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President. I have nothing on good of the order, so next item, please.
Item 9C, future agenda items, informal observations and inquiries regarding the business of the district or requests for placement of items of interest on a future agenda.
All right, Director Stanley.
Yes, I think where are we, I have three things. I think where are we getting the money from is moving up on urgent status. Because everything takes so long to do stuff. So I'm mentioning again, I know we have a finance person that Lisa knows of, that I know of, that's talked to the levy people, and I kind of buy into the idea that one generation shouldn't pay for something that several generations benefit from. So I would like to have some sort of presentation on spreading out the funding and how to get the funding, and bonds, whatever the hell are available. I just want to know what they are. I would like to Director Sutta mention, and I'm mentioning too, we had a $103 million list from our last budget in 2019. And I don't think these digesters and stuff like that was on that list, and it wasn't funded. So I would like to know the status and what new things have made it onto the list. So in conjunction with where is the money, how much money do we need? And in that presentation, including an update on, we have a fund that we're funding to replace vehicles. I would like to know the status of that fund, and in with the fundings, talk about, is there a funding solutions for people who can't afford to fix their laterals? Thank you.
Thank you.
Was I clear enough,
Crystal.
Lisa? Okay.
Director Weiner.
Yes, I'd like to definitely have a speeded up process for replacing our general manager. I mean, our board attorney / general counsel. And I also want to have a discussion on selecting our interim general counsel. I want the board to make decisions on that matter. Thank you.
As far as the RFP, RFQ for the new general counsel, that went out on 7/9, I believe it was posted, and it goes until August 7th. And I'll give the board another update. I'll send out an email on our meetings with the ad hoc committee to let you know the process. But the process is in place and it's moving as quickly as possible. Director Spada?
I'm okay, thank you.
Vice President Sutter?
I am also okay. Thank you very much.
All right, I'm okay as well. So next item, please.
Item 10, adjournment.
All right, 50. Stay safe out there. The governor has ordered another closure of the restaurants that were previously open, and I guess the nail salons and barbershops now are now being closed as well. So stay safe, people. Wear a mask and wash your hands. Have a good night. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.